From pumping iron on Venice Beach to signing bills in Sacramento, the story of Arnold Schwarzenegger may be one of the greatest political stories in American history. A guy with a thick Austrian accent who became famous for having bigger biceps than my head went from Mr. Olympia to Hollywood, playing half man, half robot and just printing money at the box office. Arnold was underestimated his whole life, but especially when he ran for governor of California. He didn't have the political chops, but he was a star who spoke from the heart.
Everything that I got was because of California. I came here with nothing. If I would have gone to any other country in the world, I would still have nothing. This is the place of opportunity. This is the greatest place, the Golden State. And now they've run it down. Our economy is spiraling downward. They're witnessing firsthand the American dream slipping away from them.
Today, there's another star who could be about to make a political splash, a sports star, one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, Aaron Rodgers. Former Green Bay Packers quarterback, now with the Jets, is having his name tossed around as a potential VP. Not Trump's VP, not Biden's VP, RFK Jr.'s VP.
I really like Aaron because, you know, our appeal is to young people. We're trying to make sure that young people are participating in the political process, that they have hope for America. Aaron Rodgers is battle tested. He's stood up. He's been hammered by the press, stood up for things we believed in. And I like that part of his character. He's a critical thinker, and I think we need that.
A Kennedy Rodgers ticket, I could see it on a bumper sticker. The sports world sold on it. They just have one question.
Could you see a world in which Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback of the Jets and actively running for the vice presidency at the same time?
Hell yeah.
Me too.
You think Aaron Rodgers ain't going to take the opportunity to show the rest of the world that he's smarter and better than all of us? He only does it every time he talks.
Just going to be honest, I think it's really cool.
I think it's fun.
I think it's really fascinating.
I think it's awesome.
A 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming off of Achilles surgery, running 6 days a week for the vice presidency, would be the best quarterback the Jets have had in a very long time.
ESPN loves the Rodgers VP story, loves it. Automatic ratings, and now they can talk politics without getting in trouble. And remember, a large portion of ESPN's audience, African American. RFK Jr. already performing well with them, and adding Rodgers to the ticket would help and really hurt Biden. The Jets, boy, do they need help. Rodgers blew out his Achilles on the 4th snap of last season. Imagine his return to training camp this summer as RFK Jr.'s running mate. Now, if Kennedy Rodgers wins the White House and the Jets are in the playoffs, would the Secret Service play O-line? What do you think's harder, debating Kamala or beating the Bills? Well, you probably have to prepare more for the Bills, but Rodgers doesn't even have to campaign. He just shows up to practice, throws a few touchdowns on Sunday, and answers twice as many questions from reporters. Now, we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but RFK Jr. is making his VP announcement in Oakland, which happens to be Aaron Rodgers' hometown. Who wins Wisconsin if Kennedy has Rodgers? Do Trump or Biden stand a chance? Would Kennedy Rodgers be playing spoiler, or would they be playing to win? Remember, Kennedy Rodgers just needs 34% of the vote, and they're in the White House. Three-way split. Now, I know a bunch of 20 and 30 and even 40-year-old guys who would punch that ticket just for fun. And tonight, the Democratic Party is in panic mode. The word around Washington, Democrats prepare to go to war against third-party candidates. After kicking RFK Jr. out of the Democratic primaries, the DNC isn't finished with him. They're building a whole team, savvy veterans, to suffocate a possible Kennedy Rodgers run. Behind the scenes, there's a Jill Stein hangover. Remember Jill Stein? Cost Hillary in 2016? And Jill Stein couldn't even shine these guys' shoes or cleats. So the word's gone out and the media's mobilized. Hurt Rodgers before the season even starts.
His finalists for vice president include quarterback Aaron Rodgers and former governor of Minnesota, Jesse "the Body" Ventura. He's also considering a pair of truck nuts dipped in ivermectin. Kennedy says he's been speaking with Rodgers pretty continuously about this for the past month. Now, that would be some good decision-making right there. Rodgers is still playing football. He's still playing for the Jets. How many losing teams can he be a part of at once?
All right, Rodgers has huge name ID. A sports hero for millions. He's well-read, articulate, independent-minded, and a gifted trash talker. The Democrats know that and went nuclear.
CNN has learned that in private conversations, Rodgers has shared wild and unhinged conspiracy theories in which he claims that the 2012 Sandy Hook shooting was not real, that it was a government inside job. Rodgers falsely claimed to Pamela Brown that there were men in black in the woods by the school, and he asked if she thought that was odd. Brown says that she found the entire encounter disturbing. CNN has also spoken with another person, one who would like to remain anonymous in order to avoid harassment, who had a very similar encounter with Aaron Rodgers, saying that Rodgers claimed that, quote, Sandy Hook never happened. Quote, all those children never existed. They were all actors, unquote.
This has to be the dirtiest hoax in history. A CNN anchor overheard Rodgers say that the Sandy Hook shooting was staged at a Kentucky Derby party 12 years ago and decided to report this the day after he was named Kennedy's possible VP. Pam Brown didn't report this when Rodgers was all over the news during COVID. Didn't report it when he was traded to the Jets. Didn't report it when he started dating Danica Patrick. Come on. And the other source is an anonymous source. Who is it? Christopher Steele? That's not journalism. That's like a chop block designed to end a career. But it served its purpose. The whole media reported the hoax.
But as CNN has exclusively learned, comments he's made in private conversations about the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting not being real.
Aaron Rodgers, like his friend RFK Jr., is as well known for his embrace of fringe theories as he is for his day job.
I think it's insane. And I also think, Charles, it's so painful and so hurtful.
You have to be insane to think that.
And for the record, Aaron Rodgers declined comment tonight, which also says to me, if somebody said that about me, and I hadn't said anything
well, I bet
like
he did decline.
This is where we are as a nation. We have actually as a subject for debate whether or not a vice presidential prospect thinks a massive shooting actually happened.
Rodgers was on an ayahuasca retreat, we're hearing, when the news broke that he was being considered for VP. And then he had to put out a statement, quote, as I'm on the record saying in the past, what happened in Sandy Hook was an absolute tragedy. I am not and have never been of the opinion that the events did not take place. Again, I hope that we learn from this and other tragedies to identify the signs that will allow us to prevent unnecessary loss of life. My thoughts and prayers continue to remain with the families affected, along with the entire Sandy Hook community. And it's sad that he has to deny that he's a Sandy Hook truther. I mean, this is where we are in America today. They report lies, so you denying the lies become the news. Any professional journalist would research Aaron Rodgers before reporting the story, and they'd immediately see he's on tape in 2012 paying respects to the victims.
Aaron Rodgers getting in on that as well today. He shares what he hopes will come from this tragedy.
I hope that we can learn from this and look for the signs more and not ever have something like this happen and keep this on our minds, because these are things that affect all of us directly or indirectly, and this needs to be something that we learn from.
This is just another dirty disinformation campaign to distract from the lifeless Democrat ticket. Now, never in the history of the United States has a president or a vice president visited an abortion clinic. That is until today, when Kamala Harris held a campaign event at a Planned Parenthood in Minnesota, where she said this.
Everyone get ready for the language. Uterus. That part of the body needs a lot of medical care from time to time.
And that's the reason why politicians don't campaign at abortion clinics. Joe Biden, on the other hand, flew all the way to Michigan to hold a campaign event, and he didn't give a speech, didn't hold a town hall, didn't visit a car plant. Joe Biden hung out on a city council member's porch and wouldn't let the media in.
We're going to take a few questions.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Thank you so much. Thank you, press. Let's head back to the cars. Thank you.
Vehicles are this way, thank you.
That's what Biden went to Michigan for. And he wouldn't even let the press see it. How is that a campaign stop? What was that? That's all he did today. He flew to Michigan for that. That's all the video we have of the president campaigning today. He went to someone's house, and no one knows what he said or why he was even there. Michigan's an interesting swing state because the Republican National Committee just filed a lawsuit demanding they clean up their voter rolls. The lawsuit alleges in most Michigan counties there are more people registered to vote than people eligible to vote. And the Secretary of State, they say, is refusing to do much about it. So Democrats are maintaining ancient and dirty voter rolls, suing to strip Trump off the ballot so you can't vote for him, suing to keep RFK off the ballot so you can't vote for him, and hitting his potential VP pick with mass shooting hoaxes. How can the Democrats campaign on saving democracy when they are running the largest voter suppression campaign in modern history? Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.